All right, so I am Kim Fitzpatrick from the Pittsburgh Path, and I am very honored to have this conversation with you, Judith. We are recording this conversation for posterity. Would you like to say hello to those who will be watching?
Hello, everybody. Yes, I want to say hello to everybody.
You recently celebrated your 100th birthday.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Yes. Thank you.
You are one of the few people living with intimate knowledge of the earliest days of the path, and I just want to thank you for speaking with me. I reached out to path workers in several communities and asked what questions they have of you. For those that knew you, I also asked what they could tell me about you.
Okay.
People who have known you from the early days had a lot to say. They say you are kind, gracious, intelligent, open-minded, and open-hearted.
Huh.
Just being in your presence is rich and calming.
Wow, that's nice to hear.
Pretty nice.
Yes.
You are a wonderful, we're not done. You're a wonderful example of the healthy blend and integration of reason, will, and emotion. You have been a marvelous mother to so many that were finding their legs in this work. You exude both a regal manner and a soft humility. You are an elegant, feminine woman. Judith, you are very highly regarded. So I'm going to say a bit about your life and then we'll get into the question portion.
Yes.
You were born to a loving family in Budapest, Hungary 100 years ago.
Yes.
You wanted to be a doctor, but were not accepted into school because you were Jewish, so instead became a surgical nurse. Yours was an assimilated Jewish family that had the cultural history of being Jewish, but did not practice the religion. You speak 4 languages. When you were 23, Nazi forces occupied your city. You managed to survive the Holocaust in hiding thanks to the bravery and determination of a non-Jewish astronomer and physicist named John Kudar. Did I say that correctly?
Yes.
Okay. He kept you and your immediate family safe, though you lost a lot of extended family in the concentration camps. You married him, and when Budapest was liberated, together you eventually made your way to New York.
Yes.
Despite the great affection you had for one another, you and John divorced in 1953. 2 years later, you fell in love with and married a fellow Hungarian immigrant, a Catholic man also named John Saly. You and John had 4 children. You suffered the unbearable heartbreak of losing your 3-year-old son, Christy, who died in an accident at a construction site near your home.
Yes.
You discovered pathwork.
2.5, but it's okay.
Okay. You discovered pathwork. You and John went to your first live lecture in 1957, and that was when you met Eva. You were one of the first helpers. You taught and trained the next generation of helpers, and you led the earliest groups. You and John, did you want to say something?
That I was John, Irakos was also John, and Eva formed a group. I mean, ask people who want to become pathwork helpers and teachers, and we did.
Okay. You and John edited many of the lectures, which we will speak about in a little while.
Yes.
You compiled and edited the book, Creating Union and the Pathwork of Self-Transformation.
Yes.
22 years later, Eva died. The Pathwork organization went through some changes and you were a stabilizing presence. You had an important role in the community. And now it's your turn to talk. I have some questions. The first question I have is, how has your beautiful, kind, loving heart remained open after all the heartbreak it endured?
I don't understand the question. What do you mean by the heartbreaks that I endured? Well, one's basic nature doesn't change.
Because you had so much heartbreak during the Holocaust and losing your son, and yet you exemplify so beautifully an open heart. I was just wondering how you managed to do this.
I don't know how I was myself. I don't know.
Just came naturally.
Yes.
Okay. Probably you're going to say this.
If I can pop in and say something about that. 'Cause
Please.
my mom has told me that she believes that your general mood or spirit or happiness and sadness is kind of set early on, and whatever happens in your life doesn't really change your outlook on life.
So it's who you are.
Yes, I could say that.
So that answers my next question, which is just appreciating what a strong woman you are. By all counts, you're also gentle and soft. But I guess you're going to say the same thing. It's just who you are. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. May I ask how the Pathwork teachings have most influenced your life?
Yes. Yes, especially what the guide said. Well, the guide said that we create our lives, but I think that we co-create our lives. But this was very important for me to look at how I create my life. How it is not that what other people do or say that formed me or my life, but how I responded to that, or how I participated in that. Yeah, that was very important. And what was important for me was that the guide said that we don't have to accept everything he says, that only what resonates with us, and we should accept, but what we don't, we should not. And that was very important for me, because I would not have wanted to be in a cult that it is like that, and you cannot change anything, or you cannot disagree with anything. So that was important.
Did the guide say very many things, or did he present a lot of material that you disagreed with?
No.
Okay.
No.
You and your husband both work with the Pathwork teachings, and I'm wondering how that affected your marriage, how that was helpful for your marriage.
Well, with John Saly, our marriage was very good. We loved each other and got along very well, and we liked or disliked the same things. And of course, we had our children, and it was a good marriage.
Did the Pathwork teachings help you with your communications or the way you interacted with one another?
Not consciously, must have, but I don't remember that I thought, well, the Pathwork teachings say that. But one thing was that, of course, sometimes we quarreled and disagreed. And then I used to say that how can we expect Israel and the Palestinians agree and live together very positively if we cannot agree on this one? And then we laughed. Yeah.
Okay. May I ask, what is the most important thing that you have learned in your life?
Well, mainly that you don't blame others. And that you take responsibility for you being who you are. And that you respect everybody. And but I always see that I found this on a tea bag, little bag, that if in doubt, do what is kindest. And that has been really helpful. I recommend it
Mm,
to you, to everybody.
thank you. That is beautiful. Not so easy to do always.
Right, right.
Did it come naturally to you or did you have to work at that?
No, I understood and I did it. It was natural, easy. Yeah, and it doesn't happen so often that you have this choice. But it's always good to think of how what I say or do affects others.
Right, right. Okay. Can you tell me what you think? What is your opinion of God?
Exactly what the guide says in the lecture, the God image. That makes a lot of sense. You know what he says, that there is, of course, this energy of love and creativity and that in the universe which we connect with, and we have personified that energy that we call now God. But that there is not a separate being except the personification. And that for me is good. It's good enough.
And how about love?
What do you mean by how about?
Love. What,
Well,
what is love? How does one love? Is it a natural force? Do we have to work at it? Like what?
Well, there are several kinds of love. One's love for one's children is different from one's love for one's husband or partner. Obviously, you know that. I don't think I can add anything to that
Okay.
because it's a feeling, that you want this, to be with this person and care very much about this person. And that's a very important relationship with anybody with whom one loves, but there are different kinds of love, yes.
Right. Is it a choice? Do you make the choice to want to love, do you think?
No, I cannot choose to love somebody, but I can be aware of how I relate to that person. I don't know what you mean by choose to love.
Okay.
I choose to love you, but I love you. But that's not the same kind of love that I have for instance, my son Alan. Obviously, you know that.
Yes, I understand.
You
Okay. I do. Yes, I understand. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about Eva and the guide. People are
Okay.
very curious about the early days of the path. And in a memorial book that was created for Eva, you wrote a section entitled My Memories of Eva. I'd like to share a little bit of what you said and then ask you to contribute to that.
I don't remember that at all.
Well, what you said was Eva said yes to life.
Yes.
That you first met her in the summer of 1958, and she was a suntanned, radiant creature wearing a low-cut dress, and all of your preconceived ideas about what mediums should look like went to the wind.
Exactly. Yes, I would say the same thing now.
Yeah. She lived in a mediocre hotel on the west side of New York City in a 2-room suite with 2 cats. Her living room was small, under an airline route, but she was never bothered by that. Her outer environment didn't bother her. And you said she was very modest. When you had a private session with her and asked her how much you should pay, she said, I don't know. What can you afford?
Yeah, that was long ago, yeah.
Yeah, I'm wondering what else would you like to tell us about Eva?
There was something in her that is, if I say hardness, that would not be accurate, but she was not soft somehow. She was strong. One had the impression that, she's a strong woman. And did and what was right for her. Yeah, I respected her a lot. We were not a kind of girlfriends, but we liked each other and we got along very well. But, we didn't hang out like girls. Yeah.
Okay. And how about the guide? What was your impression of the guide?
Well, I just imagined somehow a male figure, but not clear. The way I see people now, that it's just like a ghost. But I never questioned that was another entity, because many people saw that this was also Eva, but I don't think so. I really believe that it was another entity, as I said before, yes.
Yes.
I like him very much.
Would you describe him? Are there any characteristics you could use? Like, was he stern or loving or?
No, beyond such things as stern and loving. Beyond that.
Wise.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. In the memorial to Eva, you wrote about a session that took place at her friend's apartment in Central Park West. The first lecture you attended was number 14, Higher Self, Lower Self Mask.
I didn't remember this now. I'm glad you are telling me.
Yes. Yes, this is it. You were very back at the very, very, very beginning, number 14.
Okay.
The early lectures, you've said, were in German, and there were
Yes.
25 to 30 people attending, many with German accents.
Yes.
And you speak of the scent of sandalwood in the air and having been enveloped by the love and wisdom that was there. Can you, pardon?
What did you say was in the air?
Well, you said there was the scent of sandalwood and love and wisdom.
Yes, yes, yes.
I'm wondering what else you remember, and if you could sort of walk us through and describe what it was like to be there for a session.
Well, it was very interesting because I was never looking for something like that, for communication with spirits. And so it was very interesting, as I say, that this happened. And after giving a lecture, Eva didn't know what she had said. So we would tell her, you said this and this and this. Did I really? Yeah.
Did she change the way she looked? Did her posture or did her voice change?
Yes, yes, somebody, yes.
All of that? Her voice changed and she sat differently?
Well, she sat in a chair and then some incense was put on and some music. And then there was somebody near her who turned on the, what you call it, when you talk.
Music? Oh, the recorder.
Yeah, recorder. And then she would, that has been described. She took a few deep breaths and then she her upper body fell forward, and then she straightened out, and then the guide started to speak through her. Yeah, it was very strange, but I got used to it. I expected it. Yeah. And she was 6 years older than I. And then she had cancer, breast cancer. And she had an operation. And after some years, it came back, the cancer came back somehow. I think it was in her lungs. I don't remember that anymore. But I remember that I knew that she was dying. And I was very sad about that because she herself would not accept that. She did not say that she thought that she was dying until the very end.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So I've heard that things got very challenging then when she died, that the pathwork went through some challenging times. And that you were a very stabilizing force.
Well, I did not know that I was a stabilizing force, but I was there. And I continued to give sessions and study the lectures with people. Yes.
You also had the opportunity to have private sessions with Eva and the guide. And
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
yeah, I'd love to hear about this. What you did say about it was that it meant so much to you that it was beyond words, that your gratitude to Eva and the guide was tremendous, and that you cried all the way through it. Can you tell us what it was like to have a private session?
Well, I was always very odd, so to speak, but I cannot tell you anything else. But it was at that time, Eva only gave sessions in trance. And then she changed and started to give sessions, not in trance, but by herself, as herself. And that was very good. I remember, not that I remember on what I worked. I don't remember that.
Eva gave sessions that were not in trance?
Of course, after a while. And
Oh.
she didn't give sessions in trance anymore, but on her own. Oh, yes.
So was it the guide speaking through her or her own wisdom?
No, her own wisdom,
Oh,
her own self. Well, of course.
ah. Was that when she was being a helper, or it was just like a
No,
full?
she was a helper. She was the first helper.
Mhm.
And then she and John Pinakos trained many of us to be helpers because she could not handle so many people.
I see, right.
Yeah.
Back to the guide for a moment. I think that it seems as though sometimes the way the guide sounds is like different. Sometimes the persona has seemed different from lecture to lecture. Do you think it was always the same guide? Maybe that was the
Yes.
editing?
It never occurred to me that it was not the same.
Okay. All right. So anything else you'd like to say before we move on to the material itself? Is there anything more you'd like to say about the guide or Eva or those early days?
No, I think you know enough, and
Okay.
I don't think I have anything that you don't know. But what do you want now?
Okay, well, now I would like to talk a little bit about the process when the lectures were given. So the process when the lectures were given, my understanding is that the guide dictated the lectures through Eva and they were recorded.
No, he did not dictate. He spoke, and that Eva, I mean, it was recorded. That was another thing. But He did not dictate. That's ridiculous.
So he spoke through Eva, and then the next day Eva would transcribe the lecture. Is that right?
Well, whether it was the next day or some same day, I don't know, but it was recorded and Eva listened to it and typed it out.
Okay, and then she would give the lecture to somebody else that would make any edits, type it and make edits. Is that right?
Well, somebody else typed it up. That is sure. Yes.
Okay. And then it sounds as like at that point, things maybe got a little bit loose. I read that you said the earlier editing was sometimes done by people somebody that wasn't really familiar with the teachings and that wasn't an editor, and that maybe that it wasn't that great, some of the early edits.
So, well, yeah, that's when, I mean, my husband's editing, we did not change anything of the meanings, except that we made some of the long sentences shorter and made another word. When I mentioned one of these words that was used wrongly. What is it that ship directions? What is it?
Chart. Is that it?
Yes, instead of follow the chart, you said follow the something else that not boats to, but
Well, you described some of those in your
yes,
monograph about lecture editing.
that's the best
Yes.
thing about it. And that's right. That is a very good explanation of what we did. And people who say they want the unedited lectures, they will not understand that there is very little difference, except that it's a little bit better English. It's we made the edited version a little bit better, but as I say, nothing of the meanings or the teachings were altered.
Right. So what my understanding is then it, maybe it was in the late, where am I here? You did some of the edits, and then what happened was they were doing some additional re-edits afterwards, and then there was some discrepancies. People were thinking that the re-edits weren't all that good. So in the 90s, the trustees engaged you and John to produce an authentic editing using the original copies. And then later still, so that was the 1996 edition. And then later still, the trustees commissioned Moira Shaw to go back and
She did
redo
not
it.
commission at first. She started to the edit, and she even engaged some people who were not even on the path. I think I never read those lectures. I told her, I asked her, let's sit down together and see what is it that I did and what you want to do and what is the difference of that. And she said, no, absolutely no. So she did her thing.
So there's actually two different, for people that don't understand why, there's two different sets of lectures. Both were, I guess, approved for various reasons, and that's why there's two different versions, right?
I don't know anything about Moira's version, except that they started what they call the 50-50 path.
Okay.
But I can't hang on to things like that. I did what I did and what I could, and taught the lectures.
Well, I know.
What?
I know you said that you were very concerned about some of the language the guide used, like the masculine with he and man, and that it was excluding women. That was something that you
Because at that time, that was how everything was done. Everything was in the masculine. Yeah.
Right. And as you said, the guide was, the message was not in any way sexist. It was just the language
Oh.
of that time.
Right.
But you were concerned that it was alienated some people. So that was something that was important for you to be
Yeah.
sure was addressed.
Yeah. I remember vaguely that feeling that this should be changed, and that I think we changed some of that.
Yeah, I read that was important to you, and that the guide himself even changed some of his language as to target an audience by not using the greeting, not saying Jesus Christ and Lord, and kind of toning that sort of down a little bit as not to alienate anybody. Yeah. So some of the guide's language, another thing that you mentioned was that it was sometimes difficult for the guide to go from using the universal spiritual language to trying to compress that into the human English.
I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. You mentioned that was really challenging. And I just wonder if that sometimes caused some of the words to be different than what the guide's intention was, that it was challenging to do that.
I don't remember
No.
at
Okay.
all that there was anything that what the guide said was not kept.
Okay. Well, there's some today, it was important, as we just said, that there was, that it was inclusive, and some of the words sometimes were not, just because of the sign of the times. There are some today that have some concern about the message about
Yes,
homosexuality.
I know, and I always say, don't change anything, but you can put asterisks or something at the end of the lecture and say that, we of the leadership of the password don't agree with that, but we don't want to change, because if we start changing this, then it gets, people get the idea that one can change.
Sure.
And
Sure.
then that would not be a good idea. So rather let it stay and we make a comment, then change it. I am for not changing anything.
Right.
Especially because the guide said that you don't have to accept everything that I say if it doesn't sound right to you.
Right. So what guidance do you have, speaking now about the material in the lecture, what guidance do you have for those of us that are working with this material on how to assimilate it, not just have it be an intellectual endeavor, but how to really assimilate it?
I cannot answer this question. This is sort of ridiculous. No, Alan.
Well, that's the pathwork. To do that.
Yes,
I mean,
you work on yourself and
Do your spiritual practices, I suppose.
what?
Well, some people like to read the pathwork and then they, they're just thinking about it and they have a knowledge of it, but they don't really take it in. But so what you're,
Then that's what they do.
yeah. Okay. Judith, last time we spoke, you had an opinion about the term emotional reaction that I really enjoyed. Can you share that with us?
Yes, well, I see that that one has an emotional reaction to everything. No, I mean, I have an emotional reaction for talking to you now, but emotional overreaction is what one has to look into. But because emotional reaction is just normal. We wouldn't be human beings if we didn't have an emotional reaction to everything.
Right. I thought that was, I really loved hearing that. That makes very good sense.
Good.
So what's we're just about done here. What advice do you have to those that are newer on the path?
Well, I cannot say that because it's different for everybody, you know. Some people have to put more into understanding, and some people, I mean, it depends on the person. It's not one thing, but follow what the guide says. And if it doesn't, if you don't relate to that positively, then you should work on it, whether it's your difficulty or whether it's really something that one has to, or at least for you, that you have to examine. Yeah?
Mhm. It's hard work, and sometimes it seems like it's going to take many, many, many lifetimes.
Yes, it does.
So,
For now, for a long time, I'm working with myself on letting go, because I know that I won't stay around much longer. I never expected to live this long. So I have to let go of my attachments, which is a Buddhist teaching also. And that's not easy.
well, what is it like to be 100 years old?
Weird. I am telling myself, what? You're 100 years old, that's impossible. It's very difficult to accept. And that is really, I had no idea, as I said, I would live this long. Oh, enough,
Enough?
enough. Yes,
Enough.
yes.
Okay. Well, I think I have really no other questions. Is there anything more you'd like to say to those that are wanting to hear about the path work, the early days, a woman who has been on this path for many years?
Well, it was wonderful. In those early years, I was looking forward to the lectures, and then there were the question and answer sessions, which were very interesting. And it was a very pleasant. The whole thing was very positive experience, you know.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, my thanks.
And also that we believed that if only everybody would follow these lectures, the world would be a better place, because we wouldn't blame and make wars on others, because everybody would look into themselves and see where they are. And instead of blaming and fighting the other, we would get together and say, well, I am doing, thinking this, and the other would say the same thing. And we would not fight anymore, but we would listen to each other. And that we could, if more and more people would follow these lectures, it would be a better world. And that everybody's individual work on themselves adds to this aspect. And that it would be a good idea if people, more and more people would do this. Yeah. So we thought that it was more than just working on oneself, because you work on yourself, you add to the general development of the world. Yeah.
It would be nice if more people would be doing that.
Yes.
It's it's a challenging time right now. The world is so divided.
Yeah, well, I don't do past work anymore. I don't teach or give sessions anymore. For many years I have stopped.
Well, do you have any words for people that are very troubled by the times we're living in right now?
Well, just that you watch your reactions and see the best that you can do to move things into positive direction rather than in a negative direction.
Mm.
Well,
Well, all right. My thanks to you, Judith and Alan, and to those who participated with their questions and input. You are an inspiration, really, and it has been such a pleasure to learn about you and talk with you. I thank you.
thank you. Thank you for
Right.
saying all the best to you and to everybody who will ever watch or listen to this. Yeah, but about the editing, it's important that people read what I wrote as an introduction to the edited, to what we call those lectures, the 1996 edition, I think. Anyway,
All right.
thank you very much, and
Thank
lots
you.
of love to all of you.
Thank you, Judith. Thank you for all you've contributed to the path work.
Thank you.
Okay.
All the best.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.